It took me a while to figure out this stitch with an incredible texture, but once I did, I can't wait to share it with you. Here's the stitch we're gonna learn in this video. See, it's a beautiful 3D stitch that is fully reversible. It looks the same on both sides, and it has those sections. I call them bubbles because the whole stitch looks a lot like bubble wrap to me. Let's see how to do it. Cast on a multiple of 10 stitches plus 2 extra stitches that we're gonna put 1 stitch on each side. I will be making a really tiny swatch with just 1 repeat, so I have 12 stitches on my needle. That's 10 plus 2 extra stitches. The first 2 rows are going to be setup rows. They are not really pattern rows, but they are necessary to make sure those bubbles don't fall apart at the bottom, and we'll make another extra 2 rows at the top for the same purpose. So the setup rows, the first setup row would be purl 1. That's the one of the extra stitches, and then we move to the pattern repeat. Knit 5 and purl 5, and then we knit the last stitch. The second row will be exactly the same. Purl 1, knit 5, purl 5, repeat, knit 5, purl 5 if you have a few repeats. In my case it's going to be just once, and then knit the last stitch. Okay, here we go. The 2 setup rows are done. I turn my work, and even though this stitch pattern is fully reversible, it doesn't have really a right side or a wrong side, but it helps a lot to keep track of the right side and wrong side, just because it's easier to keep track of the pattern this way. So even if it's not like right side and wrong side in a true sense of the word, but we need to know whether we are working the even number of rows, numbered row, or an odd numbered row. And for that reason, when you turn your work after those 2 rows and you come to the right side, basically, I suggest we put a marker here to keep track of that right side, which is actually means that we will make an, oh come on, this marker is not going in. That means that when we see the marker at the beginning of the row and we are about to start the row, that means we are working an odd numbered row. That's the only reason why we need that marker. And now that we have it all set, let's get to making bubbles. The first row of the pattern would be purl 1 stitch, and then knit 1 stitch and make a yarn over. And repeat it 5 times, work it 5 times. Knit, yarn over, knit, yarn over, knit, yarn over, and knit, yarn over. Basically, we add a yarn over after every knit stitch over here, and then we simply purl the 5 stitches and knit the last stitch. Here we go. That's what we've got. Keep in mind that the number of stitches changed because we added yarn overs after every knit stitch over here, so that means you'll get 5 extra stitches for every repeat you are making. Turn your work. The next row would be simple. We purl 1 stitch, then knit 5 stitches, and then we purl all the yarn overs with the stitches in this section of the pattern repeat. So we purl 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Basically, you are purling till you come to the last stitch of the row, if you're making one pattern repeat like I do. Okay, here we go. And then we knit the last stitch of the row. That's what we've got. The same number of stitches increased, the same increased number of stitches, and we can clearly see those yarn overs over here as little holes. And that's how it's supposed to be. The next 5 rows would be mindless knitting. We are simply purling the purls and knitting the knits for the next 5 rows. Okay, here we go. 5 rows later. Let's look at the work. Because this is such a mindless knitting that you just get relaxed, and it's easy to to lose track of the rows. And frankly, don't stress yourself. Don't even count those rows. Just when you come to a point when you finished the right side row, see, that's why we have this marker over here. So you finished the right side row, and when you turn your work, you count the ridges on the reverse stockinette side of the bubble. You have 6 of them. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the last ridge, number 6. So when you are at the point that you finish the right side row and you have 6 ridges of the reverse stockinette on the wrong side of the bubble, that's when you stop. That's when you stop, and now it's time to get rid of those extra stitches and finish one of the bubbles. Let's do it. That's row 8 of the pattern. And in this row, we'll purl 1 stitch, that's the extra one, and then we move to the pattern repeat. Knit 5, nothing exciting happens to this part of the pattern repeat, and then drop 1, purl 1, drop 1, purl 1, drop 1, purl 1. So basically, like I said, we're getting rid of all those extra stitches that we made in the first row of the stitch pattern. And then we knit the last stitch. One word of caution. The idea is to drop those stitches that go back to the yarn overs. So before you start dropping stitches, just in case, look at your work and trace that stitch that is about to be dropped, trace it down and make sure it comes back to a yarn over, not that it's not this live stitch, because this one goes back up to the cast on edge, and that's something we don't want to drop. Okay, so just as a word of caution, at least until you get the pattern established and you feel familiar with it. Now that we drop the stitches, here's the fun part. You simply unravel them. Just pull the fabric all the way sideways and along the direction of the knitting, and unravel those stitches. And that what creates that beautiful bubble that is that makes that amazing texture of the stitch. See, this is the stitch. Where's the beginning? Oh, right here. So these are the bubbles that create that 3D texture, and we've just made one of them. Now it's about time to make the bubble on the other side. So this side of the stitch pattern was just plain so far, but now we're gonna make a bubble over here, and this part will be plain instead. And that's gonna be row 9 of the stitch pattern. Purl 1, knit 5. Now these stitches are on vacation. Nothing exciting happens to them. And now we do the same basically thing with the yarn overs, but this time we're gonna be purling. So we purl 1, make a yarn over, purl another one, make a yarn over, and on until you do it 5 times. And then we knit the last stitch. In the next row, we purl the first stitch, and then the pattern repeat tells us to knit 10 stitches. So we are knitting the stitches and the yarn overs. Okay, here we go. And then we purl 5 stitches. The last stitch is knit as usual. And again, we are back to the mindless knitting. We've set up the scene for the next bubble. We made those yarn overs, you can clearly see them. We increased the number of stitches again by 5. And now we are ready to start working on the bubble itself. And that would be the 5 rows of mindless knitting. We simply purl the purls and knit the knits. And here we are. 5 rows of mindless knitting and purling is done. And let's look at the work. Again, we've just finished the right side row, so I have this marker over here, so I know that I finished the right side row, and when I look at the wrong side of the bubble, I see 6 ridges of the reverse stockinette stitch, and that's a sign that in the next row we're gonna get rid of those extra stitches and finish this bubble as well. Here it goes. That's gonna be row 16 of the work of the stitch pattern, and then we purl 1 and move on to the pattern repeat. Drop 1. Again, before you drop, trace it down, make sure that it is the correct stitch. Drop 1, knit 1. Try not to pull the stitches a lot when you're dropping, because you don't want to make this one too big yet. So we'll do it later on, but for now, when it's too big and it won't be comfortable to work with it. So drop 1 and knit 1, and we got rid of those extra 5 stitches. Now we purl the second part of the pattern, those stitches that are on vacation, just sitting there waiting to be turned into the next bubble, but that's going to happen in the next repeat. And once you finish the row, go back to those drop stitches and have fun unraveling them. Here we go. That's our next bubble. As you see, the stitch is fully reversible. It looks exactly the same on one side and on the others. And because we added those 2 extra stitches, one on one side and one on the other side, that's why we have those bubbles nicely shaped. They don't fall apart here at the sides. Those extra stitches, they kind of keep them shaped well. And this is the pattern repeat. You could make it as big as you want. You could repeat it for as many times as you want to make a lovely blanket, scarf, or a cowl. You can do it on 5 stitches like we did just now, so each bubble is 5 stitches wide, or you can do it on 3 stitches like I did over here in this swatch, which also gives a lovely texture. It's not as puffy, it's not as 3D as this one, but still it looks lovely. This stitch is great for experimenting. Try to make it on 5 stitches, on 3 stitches, on 7, on 9. Try different ways and let me know how it goes. Click the link in the description to get the written instructions for the stitch we've just learned, and stay tuned. I'll see you next Thursday.